Listening to 3 minutes of rambling. Many of you have just subscribed to my channel within the last week. I did a video last week, and then I also was on another podcast, as you know, and maybe you started subscribing because of it. So I think I'm going to try to do one live stream a week here on YouTube. In particular, right now, today on Wednesday the 15th, I'll just start talking about some things that I see, and I'll talk about the next couple days. And if you happen to see this, if you're on chat or something, just hit me up. Or even this is post, if this is after, put some comments down below. If it's your first time here, and if you like it, this experiment, which is I'm taking a chance, and if you still like it after that, then hit the subscribe button for the pure experimental subscription that you're doing. I'm basically going to go here to a chart here, and let me see if I can go to right now. And yeah, right now we're looking at a chart with Sun in Gemini 24 degrees. But what has happened? What's happening right now, it's been building up for the last couple days, is a and welcome, by the way, if you're there. Say hi to me in the chat. Let me know if you can hear and see things. But right here, I'm showing a Moon, Chiron, and Aries. Now, I think this is one of the most subtle but huge transits of the year. And if you've watched my past videos, you've heard me talk about people who have Aries planets, people who have Chiron in Aries. They might be having their Chiron return right now. Anybody who has Mars in Aries, planets in Aries, you are affected by this, especially if you're at these points here of where Chiron is at 15 degrees. Mars has just crossed over in the last 24 hours. This you can look at this in several different ways, but one thing about Chiron is, first and foremost, and the most simplest way possible, is we're dealing with a hidden wound. And at times and I won't say at times, I will say this past year or 6 months, it has shown itself because of the past transits we've had. We had an April 1st new moon that was completely connected to all this. And it's been an ongoing story with the transits and lunations for the last 6 to 8 months. So here, Chiron and Mars. Chiron's this wound, and the wound that you might not know of, or you have seen, that's very raw. And we're dealing with Aries too, because we're dealing with raw wounds. And then we have Mars and Aries coming in to expose it. And here's what I think about it. The healing part of this is Mars is there to extract and to cut out, or to bring up to the surface. If you think about what fire does, when you boil things to its purity, or it steams out. What's in the blood, what needs to be cleansed. That's one example. So Mars touching Chiron here is exposing this. And this could be hard for a lot of people with these placements, because you feel like you're not in defense of yourself. And so if you can have Aries planets here in Mars and Chiron, and especially closer to these degrees of 15, 13, 14, 15, 16, let's forget about the degrees. This could make you feel exposed and vulnerable the last couple of days, today and tomorrow. And so do whatever you have to do to take care of yourself in that sense. And also, if you see and know what the wound is, if you have a connection to what has been exposed with Chiron and Aries and Mars and Aries in your chart, in the Aries part of your chart, then take the medicines, put the salve. Maybe though first it's about like a cleansing out, like the wound is there and you clean the wound, metaphorically. Because of what Aries has been going through with Mars and Aries and Jupiter being your sign, there's been need here the last several weeks to push yourself out, to push your will into the world, to show who you are for you and you alone. And what anybody else thinks, it doesn't matter. But sometimes what other people think do matter, or what they say to you can hurt you because you're putting yourself on the line and you're just pushing forward, right? And sometimes you run into things and you run into pushback or conflict or something. And so if you could have a sensitivity and a rawness there, that's an example. And so when we're looking at this Chiron and Mars and Aries, this is a chance for you to not just level up. You will, but it's more about like tending to the not so confident part of the Aries self, or the Aries part of your chart. It doesn't feel as strong as you've been showing or been wanting to do, but don't let it stop you from initiating your path and your will into this world. Sometimes though, we catch places where it's not running efficiently or correctly, or we just need to rest and recuperate. And for Aries people, or fire signs in general, sometimes you get going in inertia, you start going, the fire builds, but sometimes the fire isn't as strong as it could be. And at that moment, or in those moments, you have to find a way to keep the fire slow burning and steady. And sometimes it's just taking a couple steps back and taking care of yourself. Also being around people. Aries is a sign that sometimes can walk alone, or it's me and what I'm doing, right? But underneath it all, showing yourself in the world is an other thing. It's something outside of you. It's a mirror. So saying that, if there's people in your world that you trust, who love and care for you, who understand the parts of you that are healing or wounded, here's a time too with Mars and Chiron and Aries to go for help or for some support and that kind of medicine and salve. So, it's such an important transit here, and we know every time the moon's going to touch upon this degree in Aries every month that it touches upon that story. But this particular part of the video goes out to my Aries people, and it goes out to people who have planets in Aries. That if you want, if you are listening or watch this later on and you're looking for some more insight, you contact me. I'll come up with a customized reading for that stuff, just about that, and I'll work with you, because my heart goes out to this particular transit here. I have a particular connection to all this, and so I just don't want one to feel beat down by something like this, and just know that it's usable and workable, and in the end has to do with this deep healing. One more thing about this. To keep it simple with Chiron, if you don't know, a lot of times it's something that either you don't see in the Aries part of your chart that's been wounded, but you have a knack or a connection to others who might have something similar. And so that's one way for this to play out. That like the wound you don't see, you see in others. And by helping those other people connect with it or talk about it, at the same time, you're healing your thing. So it's like this multi-layered process, and that's the way it can work. For me in particular, I know what this is, and I know by talking to people in my one-on-one counseling, and even now, those of you watching, I know that if you connect with what I'm saying and with the Aries part of your chart, and knowing that there's been some difficulty as of late, even with throwing your will and agenda in the world, rightfully so, I think as long as you do it in a healthy way, don't smash anybody along the way, don't get too Aries where you're not aware of other people around you, but there's a way to do that fight and will in the world, and to put your core self to test yourself, and that's great. But remember too, that you can find the insight, another way of viewing your wound or medicine. And if you're in tune with that, you know what that is for yourself in the Aries part of your chart, then if you see it in other people, and if you see it outside of you, there's nothing wrong with being strong. Go, hey, I know that too. I acknowledge that in you too. And in that kind of connection, you're not alone with the wound. You're not in the corner, in the cave, in yourself. And even if you have to do that, that's okay. But just know too, you're not alone with that. And sometimes talking to other people and connecting with other people about things like this can make the biggest difference. But I see it, and I know it. I know that story. Anyway, I don't know. I think some of you are here watching. It's my little live stream experiment. So, but yeah, that right now I'm looking at the chart that you're looking at right now. Moon's in Capricorn. I'm on the West Coast, and I'm going to show you something else here. If you could see where I'm pointing to with Venus in the North Node. Now we just know I just did a video last week about Venus-Uranus conjunction that happened on a weekend, about surprises in the Taurus parts of your chart, the Taurus part of your chart. That's ongoing and will be, especially in the next year and a half intensely, because the eclipses are happening in Taurus and Scorpio and other transits. Now, a next little chapter to the story from this past weekend actually has to do with Venus here in Taurus. And you could see it's at 21 degrees and the node is at 22. So right now Venus is stepping to that chapter to connect with the node. And if we think nodes in eclipses, we think about the eclipses that happened about the 2 eclipses that happened about a month ago. And then we think about the eclipses that happened 6 months before that, and when they first started in Scorpio, which was the end of November. And then these eclipses that happened a month ago. In the Taurus Scorpio parts of your chart is where the themes are happening. Here, Venus, after starting to move away from Uranus, right here, you see it's 17. Now Venus is moving away. Now is going to the North Node. So sometimes the North Node is about some people in the more modern evolutionary style, they talk about that's where you walk to and you want to fulfill yourself in the North Node. I don't really think about that anymore. I just think it as an intense point that sometimes wants to consume everything and makes everything big, and whatever comes upon it, in this case Venus, makes everything come up specifically on stage with those themes. And again, this has to do with your self-worth and value systems too. Obviously money and resources, love and relationships, but in the Taurus part of your chart. So here we have a point where 22 degrees, but if you look here, we have Saturn squaring this. That's part of this story at 25. It's going retrograde. So there's a little bit of resistance. And what I'm going to talk about next after this, what happens this weekend, is going to go along with this story. But remember, careful of going overboard with money spending, with indulgence. These are Venus and Taurus things that I'm talking about. When it comes up to the node. On a deeper life lesson here, it can bring like prioritizing what is of worth to you. Could be money making, it could be relationships, right? Could be the garden that you are planting stuff in. But it's about values and what you value. So if that's something you want to journal about or think about this week, with Venus still being in Taurus and it hitting the node and hitting about a couple other things that's going to happen in a couple days here, I'll get to that. I think a good exercise is like, hey, what's of worth to me? What do I value? What, in the most simplest way, means the most important to me, right? So it could be, you write a list, 5 things: trust, honor, love, chocolate. So, whatever it is, make note of that, because there's a story going on here, and it's connected to this past weekend with Uranus touching Venus and rattling that up and wanting to cut out the old and bring something new in. And you can go to that Venus and Taurus, Uranus and Taurus video that I put up on my timeline, and you can see for what it is for your chart. And you could just go to your rising sign and you can click the chapter. So anyway, there's another chapter in this story here. I'm going to bump up a day. This is June 16th that you're looking at. You could see now that Venus and the node are there, that it's happening still, and careful of just overconsumption. I will remind you again, at the same time, I want you to think about what, how power dynamics are in your life and your relationships. That's another thing to take note of. So yeah, I have the 16th here. I'm also going to see the sun here in Gemini is making a harmonious connection to Saturn in Aquarius. So from the air perspective, from the Gemini part to the Aquarius part of your chart, or just this day, you have the sun, the will, the core, in a free-flowing aspect with Saturn. So you can build of the mind, build the idea, construct, crystallize the idea, okay? The Gemini is dealing with words, opinions, thoughts, how you communicate. Saturn likes to put a container and to build foundations. And with those two together, you could see how the idea and the word can be crystallized with Saturn, okay, to keep it really simple. At the same time, astrology isn't that simple sometimes. And now we were looking at the sun, and I just told you that sun, Saturn harmonious thing, but at the same time, the sun is having a hard connection with Neptune in Pisces. This is a mutable square, as they call it, 90 degrees, and square is a tension moment where something has to change. So you could be crystallizing the words, crystallizing your message, But Neptune here throws a fog, an illusion into the mix. So you have to like, it's actually good to have the Saturn to help you get through the fog. Or maybe the Saturn actually is a little bit restricting because of the container. And Neptune, even though it might not be a free-flowing aspect squaring the sun, can actually bring something more that's a porous into the idea, into the story, and bring a little bit of dream and fantasy in a good way. But when I see things like this, I'm more worried about like someone coming up with something that's not actually there, that it's an illusion. And so I will say that I would lean more towards the Saturn, the reality, Saturn, and living in the reality container place, and not and using boundaries with what's coming out of your mouth and what's processing in your head, okay? Because Neptune doesn't have boundaries. And you could see then how the fantasy and fog and what's real and what's not comes into play. My first live stream experiment, here we are. So I'm going to actually hop in to the, I wrote down on the 17th here, and this is the 17th, even though you can't see the date. And I just want to point out at this point, the moon is in Aquarius, and you see it coming up to Saturn. So that's going to happen. The moon, though, is making and it will later in the day, and I'll just move this by the hour so you can kind of see this here. There we are. We're going to go. Hang in here with me. Here, we'll just keep it at 20 degrees. No. We will keep it more than that. So here is the moon at 22 degrees. This is like 3 in the morning on June 18th on the West Coast. But here's 22, and it's moving up to the sun in Gemini. So you have a harmonious moon and sun connection. Great. You have our harmonious sextile with the moon and Jupiter that happened earlier. Fire, remember, fire and air, they have their good connection. Okay, if you basic astrology stuff, this is called a sextile. Whenever you see fire and air making a connection, it's a conduit only for a certain point of time, sextile, and you need to take advantage of it and put your gas on the pedal. Oh, hey, hi Lisa, I just see that you're watching. I didn't even look at the chat. Thank you. So that's a sextile. And we have several of these where the moon makes everything you see in air. Here's the moon in air that day is going to make that kind of relationship first with Jupiter and Chiron and Mars. So when I talked about earlier this week about Chiron and Mars in the wound, then you have the moon coming several days later to give you a different way and a different perspective to help you out with the processing of and the story and narrative with the wound in Chiron and Mars and Aries. So this is coming from a more mental perspective of Aquarius. Give you a little outsider's view. Aquarius will detach and look at things objectively like a scientist sometimes and kind of look and tweak at things from there. So that's this. And then, yeah, I just went through there. So, okay, we'll notice we're getting close to the end of the Gemini birthdays, and next week we're going to do a solstice. I'm actually going to do a solstice video. I'm going to put one up here. We notice that Mercury's starting to move along fast at 4 degrees, which is great. All right, I won't stay too long on that. You can also see Venus is getting to the end of Taurus here, and before you know it, Venus will be entering Gemini. All right, this is the 18th that you're looking at, and I actually was talking about the 17th. I messed up, but here's the 18th. It's still there though, but I'll show you a couple things. I'll leave this chart up to do it actually. Yeah, I'll do it here. Actually, do 1 more hour. And here is Venus at 24. And it's making a hard 90-degree aspect, square, to Saturn. So, this past weekend, we had Venus and Uranus and the surprise that happened in your Taurus part of your chart. Hi, Angela. Thanks for stopping by. The last weekend with Venus in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus, you saw my past video. Then we had several days ago, or right now still, Venus in the North Node in Taurus, which is connected to the eclipses that we've had last month and 6 months ago. Then, on a more reality-based place where you can really see things, Venus here on Saturday, the 18th of June, is squaring Taurus here. Now, Taurus is a reality check. Taurus always, or Saturn is a reality check. Saturn always does this, especially if it's a caustic aspect, okay? It's a limiter. It's that boundary maker. It's a rule, putting the rules down. It's an authority figure, an authority vibe. And it's doing that with Venus, like, hey, you need to answer to something. Some other people think of it as karmic. Could be. I try not to, because I try to deal in reality what is right now, because I'm a Saturn type of guy. So, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, Saturn and Aquarius is like, well, hold up, Venus and Taurus. Were you spending too much money? Did you overindulge? Let's get down to it, really. Venus and Taurus, Venus relationships, okay, and values, like I talked about earlier in this video. Saturn is going to ask you to answer to something there, or there could be there's a resistance in the story here, okay, and it's a tough one. This is tough. This is like, and then you're doing Saturn and Aquarius, which is such a cold, dry sign for what it is, and it could be completely, utterly mental, right? And then you got Venus and Taurus, which is Venus's sensuality and your five senses and the feminine and harmonization. And then it's in Taurus and it's lounging and feeling good. And here comes Saturn. Say, nope. So there's a gut check that happens here this weekend. We're already building towards it. Astrology is so interesting, though, with this kind of stuff, because it's like at the same time, Venus is at 24, and you could see Neptune in Pisces at 25. So the same time we're building up to this weekend, in the same day, you have the resistance, and then you have this Neptune-Venus sextile. Again, I'm bringing up a relationship, sextile. They're 60 degrees away from each other. Whenever you have Earth and water doing the 60-degree thing, it's a free-flowing sextile, okay? It doesn't last long, but it's there. They're harmonious together, just like fire and air was, okay? But this time we got Earth and water. And Venus and Neptune, when they get together in that way, that's like romantic fantasy land. That is like, just drink the wine, let's listen to the music, let's lay in the grass and dream, and you smell so good, and this tastes so good. And what about our dreams? What about what could be and what just feels good? And we deserve that. And forget about time and what day it is, or the bank account, and so on and so forth. Let us be in this beautiful, ethereal, transcendent place. Another sip of wine. And then Saturn says, no, back to reality. So you could see how this works. You have two, like a teeter-tottering thing here. So find the way and find the balance. I'm not going to tell you which way to go, but you're going to have to use both. Okay. So it's just funny that way. You have harmonious aspects on one part of the day, and then you have the moon in Gemini, the moon in Aquarius with Gemini, with the sun in Gemini. That's harmonious trine on this weekend, this when Aquarius moon's there. So you could see how confusion can happen, but if you think about it in a way of like something to construct upon, that you always want to take Saturn into account and accept the reality. And if there's a temporary rule set involved, play by the rules. But you still can have that romantic, beautiful, dreamlike fun. Man, Venus and Taurus with Neptune and Pisces, man, that is like the best wine, the best food. You could see how I would lean towards that, but Saturn brings the reality. So if you have any questions or anything like that, you just throw them in the chat. Thanks for, I think a couple of you, 9 of you are watching. So I'm not going to go too long here. That's the 18th, and that's actually is Friday into Saturday. I will say an offshoot thing here, because I think because of culturally, or what the world has gone through in the last several years, and when we come to like doing things that make us feel good and prioritizing them because of what we've all been through in an emotional space of COVID, or it's politics or all that bullshit, right? It's like, you try to Venus and Taurus sometimes is just about prioritization of like what's closest to you and of worth, and those top 5 things, let's say, and that you deserve to feel good, that you deserve to use the Chiron and Mars and Aries part of your chart to take care of the wounds, and to give yourself self-love, and not only that, to feel good with people close to you. And many of us have been separated from each other in one way or another, and we're taking chances lately to connect with each other in physical form, right? In face-to-face place. So, I sometimes, but I can understand the restriction or the rules that someone has or the fear of doing something like that. So know that the transits are there that we're looking at, but I always encourage people to find out like what works for them in the moment and to keep things very simple with how they look at astrology, right? How one looks at astrology and transits, and to be aware that when myself or the billions of other astrologers are talking to you about so-called harder transits, that to be aware of it. But it's unique to your chart, and do those hard transits affect you? And so sometimes people go to an astrologer like me to get more insight for a deeper issue. Some of you might know astrology and you're learning. So try not to let something overtake you when it's a so-called hard transit, and because it can be, but also know that it's going to change. And if you look at astrology and cycles as chapters of a story, that that when the hard chapter happens, that down the line there's going to be another chapter that kind of brings in another angle that flows and is harmonious. And if you keep track of these things, then you can ride that wave and not let some information, I even would say, or other astrologer, knock you off the wave. To have the tools and the structures in your world to keep you there and to keep you steady. And sometimes you just fall right on your face, but get back up and find the conduits and the places in the gifts that you have to keep going. That's my side rant, and there always will be one. So I'm going to jump to the 19th right here, even though you can't see the date. And here's the 19th. You can see now the moon's in Pisces. I love when the moon's in Pisces. Again, you can you don't answer to things or you forget about things in your fantasy land, but it can be so healing. And you think about this for a long time now. Whenever the moon comes in Pisces, every month it's gonna touch Neptune. So wherever Pisces is in your chart, make it a ritual. Light some candles, do something there, and come from a more creative, healing, transcendent, touching the divine within yourself or outside of you place. But don't get lost. Do it within a certain structure and frame of time, so then you always come back. And that's when I think about Pisces and I think about people who have a lot of it in their chart, I always think about the opposite sign, which is Virgo. And Virgo, they need each other. Virgo is the to-do list and the details and the small little things. The chop wood, carry water. And if you bring that into your Pisces world, if you have too much of it, you can have a roadmap, you can have a compass, and you can go off on those creative, loving, infinite waters, as long as you come back. As long as you come back to the real deal and make sure you eat and pay your bills, that's the way to use it. So there's Pisces stuff. What did I write down in my notes? We're actually, Pisces moon, but we're actually building up to something interesting here, and I'm just going to start in on it. Mercury here in Gemini is pretty much at 5 degrees, and you could see it's going to make a sextile with Jupiter within a couple days. It's actually on the 20th, and you could see it there 5, and it's building up here. So we have Jupiter's expansiveness in Aries, and it's sometimes it's abundance in the sign of Aries, of just core self-will, of putting yourself out there and throwing this abundance to Mercury. So you have this high, quick, fiery processing of the mind, and it could be a internal conversation you actually have with yourself, and I say internal as in self because of Aries, and then Mercury being there, speeding up and loving. Now they can move forward out of the retrograde in Gemini, that you can grasp glimpses of something for yourself in your mind, and then you can output them. Hey Namiria, thank you, I just saw your comment. You can output them with Mercury. You can create something with the fire and air. Remember, fire and air get along with each other, okay? So you got that flow. Some of you probably are here because you saw me in the Chris's podcast talking about Gemini and stuff, right? But I think with Jupiter and Aries hitting the Mercury and Gemini, which I have, This is where the wind, if you think about a metaphorical wind blowing your face and the rapidness of Mercury and Gemini, but you think about it in a idea form or the processing of those thoughts and communications, and Jupiter's coming in with the fire, you could see how the air hits the fire and it gets big. So you could see big idea. You feel me? Big story, big thing. And then how do you take that expansive energy and then do something with it as an output? That's a key part, is output. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that was like a week ago that I did that, I think, the podcast. So much has happened since then, but thank you for saying that. So, that's building at 5 degrees, and then you could see Jupiter at 6. You could see from the 19th to the 20th to the 21st. Now, I'm going to end here. I'm not going to talk about the solstice because I'm going to do a recorded video on that here maybe in the next couple days. So for each sign. But I want to talk about something here, though, and I'll go to the next day. Here's the 20th. By the way, the chart you're looking at, it's like 5:30 in the morning in the West Coast. So, but look at here at this point on early Monday morning on June 20th, you see the moon in Neptune and Pisces. That's good because you will all be dreaming around that time. But what I'm getting to here is Venus again. And Venus is just a major player. Okay, hold up. You're going to see all the transits of the last 6 months in the next 6 months. And astrologers are going to talk about a bunch of things. They're going to talk about the second half of this year or later in the winter or how hard the transits are. You're going to hear that, and it's true, okay? You're going to hear about August when Mars goes into Gemini and then goes retrograde. It's there for 7 months, okay? There's that. But no matter what, the underlying story, if you want to know, like, there's the outer planets like Pluto, Uranus, Neptune. They work on a more subconscious level. When they come across the inner planets, then you see the story play in front of you. But whenever you see the inner planets, like obviously the moon, but moon and Venus, Mars, and Jupiter and Saturn, they're very in your face. So if they're relating each other, it's not like it's hidden. They're these inner planets and they're right there. Whenever the outer planets touch an inner planet, it works in a more different kind of way, and sometimes another planet comes into that story to expose and bring the story up to the surface. I know this is sounding weird, but the reason why I'm saying it is you have to, or I won't say you have to, always pay attention to where Mars is in the sky and where Venus is. And I'm saying that because as long as the nodes, here's the North Node in Taurus and the South Node in Scorpio, as long as they're there, Scorpio is ruled by Mars, Taurus is ruled by Venus. No matter what's happening, if you go look to the rulers of those two nodes, which rule the eclipses and are working in this interesting way for a year and a half, all the way till next year, you can always grab the quick insight of what to do. So I'm a big fan of looking at Mars and Venus and wherever they are in the chart and how they're relating to each other. In this case, Monday, early morning on June 20th, I'm looking at Venus. It's still with the node. Now, after a week of hitting Uranus, flowing with Neptune, hitting the North Node, Venus squared Saturn. That's like almost hitting all the planets, not even in a week. Okay, so, but then here comes Venus, 27, making a harmonious relationship with Pluto. This goes back to Mercury, who's coming out of its retrograde. It was over these degrees at 28, 29 just a week ago. It's not that long ago, and through the retrograde, and Mercury hit Pluto for the 3rd time last week. Okay, so now you can see how the story's building. And now Venus is hitting this point, and it's harmonizing. I don't know if a transit with Pluto is harmonizing, but it's touching Pluto. Okay, so I'll go to the next day just to show you. Here's 28 degrees Venus, Pluto. So the story that Venus and Taurus has been going through in the last month is kind of ending on an interesting note, and it's hitting Pluto, and Pluto always gets to the truth of something from the deepest core of whatever it is to show everything. Here is a deep bond happening, actually. When Venus and Pluto get together in a harmonious way, it creates deeper bonds, honest, exposed truth in relationships. If you think about it in a resource level, in the money level, because of Taurus, resources and money, and then Pluto and Capricorn, is work and becoming the authority on the subject, right? Could be the bank, could be a banking system, what represents authority. You could see the examples of this. Someone has this in their chart. They're like, they have Venus and Taurus, or it's going through a major part of their chart, and then it's connecting with Pluto. You could see maybe they got a really good loan from the bank, right? And like a great relationship. Or it's an intimate relationship with somebody else, and you're sharing the resources. And after this whole last month of having the Mercury go through this part of the chart and the hard conversations that happen, and now here comes Venus, you could see the solidification of the relationship on such a deep, intimate level because it's Pluto and Venus. That's an example. For me, past that, I think of bonds like this, and they last for a long time or sometimes forever. And from a perspective of like spiritual perspective, because that's who I am. We all are, I guess, but that's who I am. The type of honesty that can come with a Pluto transit, because in the end, it's never clean and clear. It always has to deal with something that is not working and poisonous anymore, and it's just like rotting, that needs to be purged. And that's an underworld story, right? You can look to Kali Ma in Hindu myth with this, but with the divine feminine, with cutting the heads off, to Greek myth with Hades and Hecate and all that kind of stuff. And even the story in Sumerian myth of Inanna works in a different way with Venus, but it's all there. Definitely look at the Sumerian myth of Inanna and her journey to 7 gates to the underworld. It's just like one of the oldest stories ever. Whatever I'm saying, I'm getting to my point, is that relationship solidification and intimacy, when you achieve and find the trust, there's that from a heart-to-heart perspective. And then it moves into the world of earth signs like Taurus and Capricorn, where then it's of resources and of building something together. That's amazing. Then you're not alone. You're not alone, and you have structure. So not only do you have heart involved and the connection through your senses into your heart on a deep spiritual level, and then bringing in Pluto that's to the deepest core of something, then it outputs into the material world of Taurus and Capricorn, and you can build something. This could be with a friend or family member. This could be just with how you look at yourself. It can be with an intimate partner. But in the end, you relish things like this. After all the hard transits, and the Venus hitting the surprise Uranus last week, Mercury going over the degrees and the hard conversations that happen. And now it being connected in another way with Pluto. It's that's a tattoo, you know what I mean? That's a happy tattoo on oneself that can show its abundance in the long term. I think that's it. As an experiment, I thought I'd do this. I really appreciate those of you watching, and those who have commented, thank you for doing it. I'm going to become a little bit better with my production. I have some fun things I'm going to do. I always like to end my videos talking about how amazing we are as human beings, how you watching this live or later, or wherever you are in the world, or whatever space you're in, that you deserve the best for yourself, to evolve, to be the best that you can be. And astrology is one tool of many in this universe, modalities that can help with something like that. And that you're not alone. That even if that you are, and that you're watching something, or watching me, and know that I know you're out there. And anything that I say, or the videos I do, or if you go to my social media or my podcast, or my one-on-one clients who come to see me, I'm always do my best to try to connect with you and to maybe give you something that you could take for yourself in a positive way into the world. Okay? So there it is. And I'll look at the chat. Right on, Angela. Oh, Creatrix, I'm digging the purple. Thank you. Yeah, you can always go to my website, Sparkles of Gold. You can find me on Twitter, Goldie Sparkles, and I'll add that stuff. So there's my first little experiment. In the meantime, I will see you all on the next video. Hopefully, I'll be putting one out in the next 48 hours. And yeah, blessings to you all. I'll see you.